I was freaking out. I feel like I'm not real. I feel like everything around me is a dream, or maybe I got in a coma or I died. Maybe this is life after death. Fear of being crazy, fear of being schizophrenic, fear that I have damaged my brain, fear that I have a brain tumor. Or what if mine is different? What if mine is just different from any other people or everyone else? Mine is just a rare one, a special case. This condition is not harmful, and your brain is just trying to protect you. It's a defense mechanism. You are okay. You will recover from this. You're not going crazy, and everything is going to be okay.
Hey everyone, I'm Sean O'Connor, author of the Depersonalization Manual, and today I'm speaking with Lulu, who is based in London in the United Kingdom. Lulu has completed both an undergraduate and a master's degree in the field of clinical psychology. As part of her master's degree, which she recently completed, Lulu wrote her dissertation on the topic of depersonalization. What's particularly exciting about Lulu's work is that she has a unique personal insight into the condition, because back in 2020, she herself developed depersonalization disorder triggered by a panic attack. Her symptoms included feelings of disconnection, feeling like she was stuck in a dream, a fear of mirrors, and blank mind syndrome, among others. Lulu struggled with the condition for about 2 years. It was a debilitating experience. But fortunately, Lulu has since made a complete recovery. And as she wrote to me in a recent email, quote, "Now that I've fully recovered, I've recently started my own page dedicated to helping people who struggle with depersonalization and anxiety," end quote. And Lulu is with us today to talk about her experience with and recovery from depersonalization disorder. Lulu, you're very welcome to the channel. Thanks for being with us today.
Hi, Sean. Thank you so much for offering this opportunity. It's a pleasure.
It's lovely to meet you, and thank you for being on the channel. Lulu, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm 24 years old. I live in the UK. I've recently completed my master's. Depersonalization is a topic which I'm highly interested in because I have struggled with it myself, and I have done my dissertation on depersonalization. I struggled with this disorder for 2 years. It was a roller coaster of ups and downs, but I can say now that I'm fully recovered.
That's so good to hear. Where are you from originally, Lulu?
I'm half Syrian, half Saudi.
Okay. So you came to London for your studies, did you?
So initially I came when I was 16. I came to boarding school. I finished my A-levels and then I went to uni. And my journey with DPDR started actually on the first year of uni. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us a bit about that experience with DPDR, Lulu? How did it start for you? What were the circumstances leading up to it?
Yes, of course. First of all, I would like to start by saying that honestly, since I read the DP manual, I've always thought to myself, I really hope one day I get to meet Sean and express my gratitude to you in person or even on a call. But I really wanted to thank you for this amazing work, because your book truly saved my life. And I'm sure it did for many other people. It's one of those books that the ones that you made, the DP manual. It's one of those which are not just made for business reasons or for you to gain money or something like this. It's truly remarkable. It is helpful. It is definitely worth it. So I first want to express my gratitude towards that. And yes, of course, I'm gonna walk you through my journey. So it was on the 23rd of November, 2020. I was going through a hard time in my life at that point. A lot of traumatic things were happening in my life. And I remember so it was my first ever panic attack. I've never had panic attack before. So during that panic attack, it was late at night as well. And I was in university accommodation, so I was surrounded by friends. And when I had that panic attack, the panic attack was so severe that it literally, I know panic attacks usually last for a few minutes, but this one lasted for all night. I mean, one after the other, one after the other. If I calm down for a bit, the next one would come up. So during that panic attack, it was literally the first panic attack. During it, that's when I started feeling the DPDR symptoms. The things I was feeling, were I was feeling like I'm going in and out of reality, and the sensations that I was experiencing, it was kind of like I felt that something must have happened to me. I was telling my friends around me that, okay, I must have died, or maybe I just got in a coma, because there's no way that I'm experiencing this feeling where I feel like I'm in a cycle of getting in reality, getting out of reality. Everything around me feels just so weird. I kept telling my friend, like, am I real? Am I okay? Like, what's going on with me? And to be honest, at that point, I think we were a bit younger, and people, like my friends around me, they were laughing a little bit because it was a bit like crazy to them. And they were like, what's wrong with you? Like, what's going on? I was like, I don't know, but I just feel like I'm not real. I was freaking out. I feel like I'm not real. I feel like everything around me is a dream, or maybe I got in a coma, or I died. Maybe this is life after death. Like, that was the constant thought in my head. Like, maybe this is life after death. I must have died some time ago, and then this is what I'm seeing after death. All these crazy things happened, and I thought, okay, should I try to sleep it off? Maybe if I try to sleep it off in the morning, I'm gonna feel better. Unfortunately, that night I could not sleep. I could not sleep at all, because the panic just kept on going on, and the feeling of dissociation and the DPDR symptoms were just, they kept creeping in, and I couldn't just ignore it. I was so scared of it. It was very new to me. I didn't even know what is that feeling. I didn't even know it was called DPDR. I didn't know anything about it. So to me, I was convinced I either have a brain damage, or I died, or I'm in a coma. So I remember it was maybe like 4 a.m, and I was messaging everyone back home. Like, I wasn't messaging my family because I didn't want them to be worried, but I was messaging friends, like, have you ever experienced, I was telling them, have you ever experienced these kind of symptoms? Have you ever been through something like this? Because I was very confused, and everyone I've messaged, they were like, no, never. They've never experienced this. So I remember one of my friends told me, speak to a doctor. Like, what are you waiting for? Just call a doctor, call your GP. So it hit me finally. Okay, let me call a doctor, because I'm clearly not okay. And that was the point, I think, when I felt the worst in my life, because I took the phone, I call my GP, and I tell my GP, okay, so I've had a panic attack, and I just feel like I'm not real. I feel like everything around me is a dream. I feel like I died, and this is life after death. I feel like I'm in a coma. Everything just feels weird around me. And the shocking thing that happened was that my GP, she literally told me, I remember her words exactly. She said, I don't know what's that, and I don't know how to help you. And as she told me, if it doesn't go away in a day or two, I can give you some medication to remove the panic. And at that point, I was completely against medication, because I was like, no, I'm not going to take medication. I didn't want to do that. So once my GP said that to me, that's it. I was convinced. If my GP doesn't know what is that, she's never heard of it. She's a doctor. If she doesn't know what's that, that's it. I've damaged my brain. I died, maybe something. I have a very rare condition. These are the thoughts that kept coming up to me. So yeah, that's the start of how it started.
Yeah, it's such a scary experience. The feeling of going in and out of reality as well, and is such a common experience with when you're people who have panic attacks, and the feeling that things around you aren't real. The intense feeling of disconnection, you're trying to make sense of it, and so you jump to conclusions like, well, I must have died, I must be in a dream and I can't wake up, etc. It's a very, very frightening experience. But it's, and something that I definitely want to keep coming back to in this interview, Lulu, is, as somebody who is working in the medical field now, and you're starting your career working in clinical psychology. But you know, the it's such a common experience for people to go through to experience depersonalization and speak to a medical health professional and get a response like that, which is really, really terrifying, because your assumption is, well, if you've never heard of it, that's it. I mean, my life is over. Because you're trained, like, as somebody who is going into a medical career, how important is it for there to be awareness of it, for a wide awareness amongst GPs, so that when they speak to people, they can recognize it? Because it's, for me, it was so important. It's so important to be able to tell people that, like, what you're going through is not some rare disease. It's not some tropical thing. It's not something people have never heard of. The awareness of it in the medical community is absolutely, absolutely vitally important.
It's definitely crucial. It's very, very important. I think, to be honest, John, I'm not gonna lie to you. At this point, I feel like there's more awareness, especially about DPDR. Like, I see more about it now. I read more about it on Instagram, on social media, and on YouTube. I see a lot of videos and things like that about DPDR. But at the point when I was struggling, I remember myself, I was trying to Google my symptoms, and I couldn't find many things about it. I couldn't find good information about it or accurate information. And so for a GP, to be honest, that was surprising for a GP to not know what was that. And I think it's very important for medical health professionals to be informed about these things, and also not just informed, but at least even if they don't know much about the condition, I feel like the approach should be different. The approach as to not dismissing the person in front of you, or not making them feel like they've got something weird or rare, or that's just crazy what they're going through. And I feel like healthcare professionals, even though they might have their degree, they've worked for it, and they're very highly trained, but there is an aspect where they should be really trained on the way they approach their conversations with their patients, how they can validate their feelings, and not make them feel like, okay, I don't know what's that. Maybe she could have said something like, I can refer you to a clinical psychologist at that point, for example. She could have said, maybe I should have came over to do like an assessment, so we can rule out any other issues. There was a lack of what's the word? Like, there was a lack of professionalism, I would say. Like, yeah. I'm sure not everyone is like this, but it's very important that healthcare professionals are trained to know how to approach situations that are very sensitive like this. Especially, I was panicking, and for someone to be panicking on the phone, I think that's very dangerous, and that's a serious issue.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that it's when you're speaking to somebody who's panicking, it's like all you need to give them is just a direction to move in. Just say, okay, I understand you're having a difficult time at the moment. I may not recognize all the symptoms you're describing, but I can clearly see that you're anxious. I can hear from your voice that you're anxious. So what you're experiencing is probably in the realm of anxiety, okay? Now, I may not be able to give you all the answers that you want now, but I'm going to pass you on to somebody, or I'm going to refer you in some direction, just to give them a path forward, okay? But to tell somebody, like, I don't know.
That's exactly her words. Her words were like, I don't know what's that. I remember this sentence, when she said that just freaked me out. I thought, okay, that's it. I damaged my brain. I have a rare all different scenarios came to my mind at that point, which were not needed at all, because DPDR, it just fuels up these thoughts, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're in that situation, you have spoken to your GP, and you feel like, actually, and a way I often like to think of it is, if you imagine somebody 100 years ago who develops, they have a panic attack, and they develop, say, agoraphobia, right? So they have a panic attack, maybe they're in a crowd or something, they have a panic attack and they develop agoraphobia. And suddenly they are afraid of being outside. They're afraid of being in crowds. They can't get on a bus. They can't get on a train. They're just if there's people there, they feel like the world is closing in and they're going to die. They're going to have a heart attack. Now, if that person describes, now, let's assume that that person has never heard of the term agoraphobia before, and then they speak to a doctor who has also never heard of the term agoraphobia, not through no fault of their own, by the way. I mean, it's just that the awareness of the condition may not have kind of reached that tipping point where there's a general awareness of it. But for a person who is describing that, for a person going through agoraphobia who doesn't know what the term means or doesn't know the term, the experience of going through, of feeling like the world is closing in and you can't be around anyone, is going to feel like you're going crazy. That's what it's going to feel like. There's no terminology for it. There's no language for it. I must
There's
be
no
going
label.
crazy. There's no label.
There's no label.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. There's no label. So it is, but when you go to a doctor and if the doctor says, well, that's called agoraphobia, it's anxiety symptom, is extremely common. I know it's really scary, but it's harmless and temporary and you'll be okay. Like just those words, just, okay, here's a label. Let's put a label on your experience. It doesn't switch off the anxiety, but as I said earlier, it points you in a direction and just starts you on a path towards recovery. And at that stage, that's what you desperately, desperately want. But again, think of somebody approaching their doctor and the doctor saying, Jesus, I don't know what you're on about. That sounds pretty scary, then that's not what you want to hear. But again, it's just, I think people can kind of get quite angry about, I've spoke to people who get quite angry at like the medical profession, but it's not about individual. I don't think it's about like negligence or anything like that. It is just about awareness of it, combined with, as you said, Lulu, an ability to communicate a sense of practical steps, and just be compassionate as well, and just say, okay, this person's obviously having a panic attack, so I'll talk them down and point them in the right direction. But I also agree that the awareness of DPDR is growing like exponentially, and especially in the last couple of years, it is the awareness of it in the medical community and just in general through social media, etc., is absolutely growing.
100%. Yes, I agree with you.
So following that initial experience, Lulu, what were the subsequent days and weeks like for you?
So after my GP told me that, that's it. I feel like my life has changed forever. And I remember from that day on, I wasn't eating. I wasn't sleeping. I don't remember sleeping at all. Panic attack after the other, panic attack after the other. Looking around me, seeing everything is not real. Everything is a dream. So I couldn't sleep alone. I remember I had my flatmate, my very close friend at that time. She used to sleep next to me just to keep my company because I couldn't sleep at night. And I was very scared. And I would stay up all night. I had a teddy bear in the room. I'd look at the teddy bear and just look at it and just feel like this teddy bear is scary or it's not real, or just, it was really weird. And I feel like people who don't experience DPDR truly would not understand what this experience is like. It's really one of those things that you either know what it is because you've experienced it, or it's very hard for you to understand it. So yeah, I feel like at that point, maybe I've hit rock bottom. I've lost myself and couldn't go out anymore. Was just not sleeping, not eating, lost so much weight, looked yellow, like just pale. So yeah, I started Googling my symptoms at that point, and that was definitely not a good idea, because when I started Googling my symptoms, the first thing that I was seeing on Google was psychosis. Again, that was so scary for me. Another thing, hallucinations. I was seeing schizophrenia. So the next thought in my mind was, oh, I'm schizophrenic now. Is that what schizophrenia is like? And even though I'm in psychology, but I was just in my first year, so I would say I wasn't even that knowledgeable. I was at the beginning of the year, right? The academic year, I mean. So I Googled it, and on Google, I couldn't see anything helpful. Everything was just even more harmful to read and was causing more anxiety, more panic attacks. and more depersonalization symptoms. I think I stayed like this for maybe a few weeks or over a month in this state until I don't remember why I never thought of Google or searching my symptoms on YouTube, but then it hit me after like maybe 1 month and a half. I was like, let me check on YouTube. What is this thing? So I Google, I go and search on YouTube and I search, I'm feeling unreal. And your video comes up. Sean, I'm serious. I swear to God, when I saw your video, I think one of your videos, the first one that came up, I cried. I literally cried because I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that this is something. Oh my God, someone is explaining what's going on with me. So what is this thing? Depersonalization. Now I have this new weird name I've never heard of. What is this thing? But I cried because I was finally able to see something that was reassuring. I think your video was so reassuring to me because you were saying in your video that you're not going crazy. You're not gonna become schizophrenic. It does not get into anything worse. You were saying things like you're not in a, I think you said you're not in a coma or you've mentioned these things. So all of the thoughts that I had, you basically, I was thinking you knew what's going on in my mind. And that's why I thought, I really hope one day I meet you and say thank you, because I don't know how you knew everything I was going on. Now I know. I think it's an experience that these thoughts come to everyone who goes through this experience, right?
Yeah.
So I was watching your videos. One video, I think I didn't hesitate for long. I bought your book immediately.
That's great. I'm thrilled that you came across the book, or you came across the videos and found it to be helpful. It's really interesting, Lulu, you mentioned that you're studying psychology and still having the catastrophic thought that this might be psychosis, or that you're developing schizophrenia or something. I mean, something I've talked about before is that, I mean, I was like absolutely certain I had developed schizophrenia, or I was having a psychotic break. But interestingly, when I looked back on it, I mean, I knew then that, and I know now that, like, the symptoms of schizophrenia or a psychotic break, they're very, very serious, and they're very, very clear, and they're extremely disruptive. Not just in terms of anxiety, but in terms of like delusions and extreme paranoia and things like that. But it's a very clear condition, and people who are working in the medical field are trained to spot these symptoms, right? So I knew back then that the symptoms I was displaying were not the symptoms of psychosis and schizophrenia. I knew they weren't, right? I also knew that the medical professionals I'd spoken to, none of them ever said to me, "Oh, well, you might be having psychosis or a psychotic or a schizophrenia." So there was never a shred of evidence that it was happening. And yet, I was still I always thought to myself, yeah, but what if it is, Sean? What if it is? You don't know. So it's very interesting to me that, like, somebody like yourself was actually training in the field of psychology with even more knowledge of it than that. It's like anxiety just doesn't care. It doesn't care about evidence. It doesn't care about your experience. It just says, yeah, but what if you're going crazy? What if you're developing some awful condition, even though there's no evidence for it?
Yes, that's 100% true, because I also remember when in one of your audio, in the audiobook, you've made one full episode or a recording of knowing but not believing, which was something that's exactly what you're saying, right? Because I knew I was, at one point, I knew I was real. I just didn't feel like it. I just didn't feel like, I think it was knowing but not feeling, not knowing but not believing. But yeah, I knew I was real, but I did not feel it. And so even yeah, at that point, again, I would say, like, I wasn't that knowledgeable about psychology. So for me at that point, schizophrenia was something scary, even though now, after I've graduated, I've learned, I have all the knowledge, I don't perceive it as a scary thing, of course, because I'm knowledgeable about it now. But at that point, I think I used to see it as a very scary thing. Like, what do you mean I'm schizophrenic now? And it was very scary. But another thing, Sean, is even when I came across your videos, and I know that was part of that was part of the bully. I think you've described it as a bully. Even when I came across your videos, even how much you validated what I was feeling, and I remember that you were saying literally every symptom I was having. Even then, I was thinking, yeah, but what if he's wrong? Or what if mine is different? What if mine is just different from any other people or everyone else? Mine is just a rare one, a special case. These thoughts just come, and I think that's still part. I would say to everyone who's watching, that's still part of depersonalization, because it just triggers these thoughts in you. It just gives you that. It's part of anxiety, actually. It just gives you the what if, what if. But no, your case is not special. It's not. You are special, yes. You are a special person always, but your case is not different. Your case is not special. Um, you will recover.
Yeah, absolutely. The worry that yours is different, or that you have a different version of it, and that you can't recover and you won't recover, is it's so common with not just DPDR but all anxiety-based conditions, that it is basically a symptom of it. You know, it is basically a symptom of it. Um, I was so I was completely convinced. I was like, no, I have it. Even when I saw on forums, like those people who had recovered, and this is back in 2005, like there's the people who are saying, okay, I recovered from this. Even the possibility that recovery was available, it made me very happy for a while, but only a short while, because then the thoughts would kick back in and say, yeah, but yours is different. That person who recovered, they have a different version of it than what you had. Like, you know, your circumstances are different. You can't recover. But then you realize that everybody, literally everybody who develops this condition has that fear. It is part and parcel of it. Um, uh, we mentioned some of the symptoms at the top of the interview, Lulu. But could you just tell us more about your experience specifically with the symptoms that you found the most troubling?
Yeah. So again, the fear of being schizophrenic, or the fear of I have developed psychosis. That was one of the biggest fears I had. Suddenly, the word schizophrenia became so scary to me. I couldn't even think about it. The minute I think of the word schizophrenia, it was just full-blown panic attack, back to square one. Another thing, I couldn't look in the mirror. Every time I looked in the mirror, for some reason, I just couldn't recognize myself. I just couldn't. I would look at myself and be scared, like, who is this person? It was kind of like there was a glass between me and the mirror, and there's a glass between me and the person in front of me, as almost as if like this person is a stranger. Another thing, I would look at my hands. I'd feel like my hands don't belong to me. Like, whose hand are these my hands? Like, touch me. I'll tell my mom, touch me, touch me. Are these my hands? Another thing is I had blank mind all the time. I would just feel like my mind is blank. Now I know it was because of the anxiety, right? Because your brain is just too occupied thinking or worried about the danger or the threats around you, right? So my mind was blank all the time. I couldn't remember many things. I felt like my memory has been disrupted somehow. Um, Obviously, also the detachment feeling, being detached from reality, being detached from myself. These ones are the main ones.
Yeah, and they're so frightening, especially when you're going through them first, and you don't have, as you said, we don't have a label for them, we don't have a way to describe them. But as recovery continues, and you start to look at them from a non-anxious perspective, and you realize that each one of these symptoms has the simplest possible explanation behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
100%. So I would say as well, one of the things that it's very important for people who are struggling to know is that the healing or the recovery journey is not going to happen in one day or in one week. And I think it's very important as well, if you allow me to say that. I mean, I think even reading your book is not that okay if they're not reading, listening to it. If even if they listen to it fully and they feel like, okay, I'm still having the symptoms, that doesn't mean that it's not working. Like, this needs practice. They need to hear it over and over again, and they need to practice it. But I was instantly feeling better after I heard your audiobook. But it took me some time because I felt like, okay, I'm better now. I'll be better for a month. I'll be okay for a month. And then it will come back. And what I would do is then I will go back and listen and remind myself of all of these reassuring things that you said. And it just takes time. But with time, your brain just learns that this condition is not harmful, and your brain is just trying to protect you. It's a defense mechanism. And eventually it ends and it goes away and it never comes back.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing because the onset of anxiety can feel so sudden. And it can feel like a switch has been flipped and you've gone from one state to another. And then what we can tend to do in recovery is we try to reverse that. So we think that okay, that light switch, it's here somewhere. All I have to do is find it. So I'll try this thing, and I'll try this thing, and I'll try this tip and that tip, and I'll put them all together. I'll try them for 24 hours, and then I'll wake up tomorrow morning and I'll check to see, did that flip the switch? And if it didn't work, then okay, well, that didn't work, so now I got to go back to square one. So try this thing and this thing and this thing and see if that works. And that's what I did for a long, long time as well, trying to see was that going to work. But what recovery actually is understanding that anxiety is a habit. It's a spectrum. It changes. It goes up and down over time. And instead of trying to find the switch to flip it, which is a waste of time anyway, what you're doing is you're just accepting that this is a habit, and you start to train yourself out of the habit. It takes a bit of time. It takes a bit of discipline, like changing any habit does, but it works every time. But it can feel strange to do that when the initial onset of the anxiety just felt like it was that. It was like, okay, well, I have to do that in reverse. And it's like, no, you don't. What you're doing is training yourself out of the checking on that. And it takes a bit of time, takes a bit of discipline, but with patience and effort, it works every time.
100%. Yes, I remember confirming to what you just said. The idea of checking in on yourself, that you think you're checking in, okay, you think to yourself, okay, let me check if I'm still in a depersonalization state. You check in, and that just brings it back in. So it's not helpful. I remember when I was struggling, there was 1 month when I felt like I'm fine. I'm back to normal now. And what happened is my dad asked me, oh, what happened to that feeling? Are you still experiencing it? Guess what? He triggered it. That question just triggered it, and I felt it again. It was because I was still in my journey. I was still in the recovery journey. So that period is critical to get yourself out of the habit of checking in. Because as you said, normal people don't go around and be like, oh, how am I feeling today? Am I detached? They don't do that, right? So.
Yeah. And it's the thing as well of worrying that if I remember thinking to myself, like, okay, even if I can recover from this, which I wasn't sure that I could, but if I ever do, what happens if I'm watching TV in 10 years' time and somebody mentions depersonalization, and then it'll just set things off again, and that felt like a realistic prospect. But what I realized was that that's not recovery. That's not recovery. That's like saying I'll recover from hay fever, but I may never stop sneezing for the rest of my life. It's like, but that's not recovery. That's not recovery.
That's more like avoidance.
Exactly. It's avoidance, yeah. And this is why we get into patterns of avoidance. It's it's not just like reducing the symptoms, which you can always do, but it's also understanding and internalizing what the symptoms are and why they happened in the first place. Because when you do that, you learn that, I don't actually need to be afraid of this. This is okay. It was very scary at the start, unpleasant at the start when I didn't understand what this was. But now that I understand it, and not only was this never going to hurt me, this is a protective mechanism. This is my body and brain trying to protect me. The reason it feels so frightening is because there's nothing to be protected from. There's no bear chasing me. The house isn't on fire. Nothing bad is
100%.
happening. But I just have this alarm going off, and I'm going, why is the alarm going off? Why is the alarm going off? That's why it feels so frightening. But in
And your
recovery,
brain is trying to make sense of it. Your brain is trying to make sense of why am I feeling this anxious? And it makes everything around you feel scary, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So recovery is not, it's not like living in fear of being triggered about at some point in the future. It's understanding, internalizing why it happened, why you don't need to be afraid of it, and then if somebody ever mentions panic or anxiety or DPDR to you in future, you're hearing it from in a non-anxious context, and it's actually kind of an interesting thing. And there's the association that you had with it of it being a point of fearful association is gone, and now it's just something you can talk about if you want to. If you don't want to, you don't have to, and that's all it is. That's all it is.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because I've done the whole study, 1 full year. I was doing a whole dissertation about it. So I was reading about it, I was writing about it, and it wasn't triggering me. It was all good. Another thing was, I also thought it was scary that, okay, what if I can't speak about philosophical ideas anymore? Because I loved these things before. I'm a deep person. I like philosophical talks. I like talks about, okay, what is this world? How did this world start? Things like that. And these, at that time when I was struggling, these questions were just very scary for me. But now it's fine. I talk about them normally, and they're interesting again. Back at that time, they weren't interesting. They were just scary.
Yeah, absolutely. People will often say to me about, the concept of like solipsism, for example. They'll become absolutely terrified of it, or any like different ideas in philosophy. And what I explained to them and what they're also understanding during recovery is that it's, these concepts are just like, they're just words. They're just words, right? Um, it's not the words and the concepts themselves aren't inherently frightening. There's no philosophical concept that is inherently frightening. They're just concepts. They're just words. What makes them seem frightening is the degree of anxiety that you're experiencing when you focus on them, right? So if I would focus on some philosophical concept and it would scare the absolute life out of me back when I did DPDR. But also, like a glass of water would scare the life out of me. The mirror would scare the life out of me. The sky, trees, my dog, my guitar, like this, all this stuff scared the life out of me, right? And what I realized was it's not actually about the dog or the guitar or the philosophical concept or the sky or space or whatever. What's connecting those things is anxiety. It's my levels of anxiety being higher than normal. There's no danger around me, so I'm trying to find points of danger. I'm trying to find where this is coming from. My brain is just trying to make sense of what is a very, very frightening experience and latching onto all these different things to say, is this the explanation? Is this the explanation? But as your recovery continues, you let go of all those things, and then you come back to things like science fiction novels, philosophy, horror, whatever it is you're into, and they're not frightening anymore from an anxious point of view, because it's the levels of anxiety that have faded away and stopped, and you can appreciate them from a non-anxious perspective, which is a healthy way to appreciate them.
100%. Yes.
Yeah. Lulu, you may have mentioned it already, but what was your lowest point in the whole experience? I mean, was there a particular moment that sticks with you?
So I think there's a couple of them. The first one was when my GP said she doesn't know what was that. That was when I was like, okay, my lowest point ever. And my second one was the New Year Eve of 2021. I thought, this is what I was thinking, and this is something wrong that many people might fall into. I was like, it was 11 p.m., right? So 12 a.m. is when the new year starts. And I was thinking, okay, from the new year, I'm not going to struggle anymore. From the new year, this is going to be a new year, no more struggling for me. Believe it or not, midnight, exactly, I feel like I relapsed. I feel like it just got worse.
Right.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, making this decision is not helpful. That's not healing. That's not how you recover. Let your body do its thing. Let your body calm down by itself. Take as much time as you need. It takes time, and healing is an up and down. It's never linear, right? So it will take time, and it will take a lot of ups and downs. You will feel like you've healed, and then it will come back. But that doesn't mean you're not recovering. That's still part of recovery. So
Absolutely.
that's what when on the beginning of 2021, I feel like I relapsed, and I think I went back to square one.
Yeah. Um, it's a very common thing that people do. They say, and I certainly did this too. They say, okay, well, I want to be better by my next birthday, right? Or listen, I have to be better for Christmas, like, because I love Christmas and I don't want to miss that, like, or the New Year being a perfect example. And it seems like it's a good goal to move towards. Like, I mean, for example, if you, like, I don't know, like, broke your leg or pulled a muscle, or like, I don't know, if you hurt yourself physically somehow, saying, okay, I want to be better for the new year can actually be a really good goal, because it can motivate you to exercise and, like, and get out and, get your life back to normal and practice and all the rest of it. But with anxiety and DPDR, what you're doing is you're inadvertently putting a ticking clock on your recovery. And even with the best of intentions, what you're doing is you're reminding yourself about it at a time when you don't need to be doing that, and you shouldn't be doing that. So the example I always like to give is, think about, basically, if you had another habit of thought, is like having a song stuck in your head. If you had a song stuck in your head and it was driving you crazy for a couple of days, and you said to yourself, okay, I have to have this song out of my head by 4 o'clock on Thursday because I have a big meeting. So it has to be gone by then. So I'm going to write that down. I'm going to make a goal of it. Here we go. Right. Now, they could do that with the best of intentions, but what are you doing inadvertently? You're communicating to your brain that this song, this thought, is so important that it has a timeline and a deadline that it has to be finished by. And what that tells your brain is that it is important. It deserves your focus. It deserves your attention. Instead, that's not going to work, obviously. And also, as the time ticks closer to the deadline, you're just going to be thinking about it more. You're just checking on it more. Instead, what do? We accept that the song is there. You don't have to like it, but accept that the song is there, and go and listen to other music. And it feels strange to do that, especially in the context of anxiety and DP. But that's what we do. That's what gives your brain the nonverbal permission to let the anxiety and DPDR go in the background. But when we put these kind of constructs around it, these limits and these goals, it is inadvertently telling your brain that this is important. It is important. But what you're aiming for with recovery is that it's not important. It's got nothing to do with you anymore. You're not in danger. It has nothing to do with you. So in order to recover, we take these constructs off it and allow the forgetting process to happen by simply focusing away from it consistently enough. But when you're going through it and you get to that new year and it's still there, it's like, oh, damn it.
No, it's just still there, like worse, even worse than
It's
before.
worse now. Yeah.
No, I
Happy
understand.
New. Oh God.
100%. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I think, you're right about what you said. It's you want to make your brain believe that it's not important, but at the same time, in the field of mental health, it's very important to not dismiss people's feelings and to not invalidate them. But I think, especially with DPDR, it's not about dismissing people's emotions or feelings or invalidating them, but it's more about it's just because it's one of those conditions that it fuels of these thoughts. It fuels of you giving it the power and making it feel dangers in your head. So the more, not that you should distract yourself, but the more you focus or redirect your focus on something else, without giving your thoughts too much power, the better it gets.
Can you tell us more about what was the experience like of starting to recover, and what did you notice about the changes that happened, and it was a gradual process, or how was it for you?
Yeah. So 2 months after my initial call with my GP, I think around 1 month or 2 months, 1 month and a half, 2 months, that's when I came across your book. And I would say that's when my recovery journey started, but it started slowly because, as I said, even then, I couldn't see many information on the internet that is so accurate as much as your information was accurate. So at that point, even then, my brain was convincing me that, okay, maybe you're wrong. Um, but that's when my recovery journey started. I think there was the main feeling when I came across your book and when the recovery journey started was that there was a very heavy weight that got lifted off my chest. And that heavy weight, I would label it as um, fear of being crazy, fear of being schizophrenic, fear that I have damaged my brain, fear that I have a brain tumor. All these fears, after coming across your book, they were just lifted off. And I think that was the key to my recovery, because once I started knowing what is going on, I became aware that what I'm going on is not something crazy, is not something rare, is not something as dangerous as my brain is trying to tell me. And that alone just helped a lot in my recovery, because even though I was still feeling those symptoms, my fear of these symptoms got a lot less than how it was before I read your book.
That's great to hear. I'm so happy it was helpful. And in this time, Lulu, if you don't mind me asking, were you speaking to like family about this? Did they know what was happening, and were your friends aware of what your experience was?
So not many people were aware. My flatmate knew about it because she was living with me. She knew what was going on with me. After my talk with the GP, the initial talk, I told you I went through like 2 weeks of no eating, no sleeping, nothing. And I remember at that point, because it was COVID, it was lockdown, my father used to video call me every day, and he used to just talk to me, check on me, and we used to have like a chit chat on video call. But for those 1 to 2 weeks, I didn't speak to him at all because I was not in the right headspace, and also I looked scary. I feel like I looked scary at that point because I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, like dark circles. So I knew that if I talked to him, he would know something is up with me. But I think he felt, and one day he just video called me and I had to pick up. And I told him everything. I told him what happened with me, that I had this panic attack and that I feel this way. I feel like I'm unreal. I feel like the world is not real. I feel like I'm in a dream. I feel like I died and I'm in a coma. And I remember seeing the fear in his eyes. He wasn't expecting this. He got really scared because I don't think he's ever heard of something like this. I think the first thing that came to his mind was that his daughter just gone crazy, to be honest with you. Um, but instead of him like dismissing me or anything, in fact, he extended his helping hand and he helped me a lot. He was a source of support in my life at that point. So yeah, then my mother knew about it and she also helped a lot. But my father was the first one from my family to know about it and he helped me a lot. Um, yeah.
That's so good to hear. Yeah, it can be a very, very stressful thing for families to go through as well, especially at the beginning when you don't know what's happening. Because this is one of the things about a DPDR as well is that, like, as I was saying earlier about agoraphobia, agoraphobia, as difficult as it is, it's kind of easy to describe, or not easy to describe, but there are specific environmental and physical factors involved in it. So you can still describe it. You can say, okay, when I go outside, I feel scared, I feel panicky. When I'm surrounded by people, there's specific geographical instances involved in it. Whereas with DPDR, I mean, I remember saying things like, I just don't feel like I'm real. I feel like my memories are fading away. I feel like I look in the mirror, I can't see. And that's a terrifying thing to say out loud, because when you say that out loud, you think, okay, well, I have to be losing my mind. Like, that's what somebody says when they're losing their mind, right? So you're afraid to say it, and then people hear it and they're terribly concerned about you, which just ramps up your anxiety all the more, you know? It's a very, very stressful thing. What you described as well, Lulu, about, being in a place where you weren't eating or sleeping. Yeah, that's very, very common. Same thing would happen that happened with me for the first couple of weeks with it. I just stopped eating. I just stopped eating. I couldn't. I would just look at plates of food, and I was like, I can't put that into my body. My sleep stopped. I was having nightmares, in which I was having panic attacks in DP. It was apt, and I lost a crazy amount of weight as well. It was very, very scary, and just not knowing what to do about it. It's very frightening. You mentioned that this was a lockdown as well, Lulu. So this is a part of the story we haven't discussed already, but that must have been particularly frustrating. So you were in London at the time. So
I
you're
was
in
living in
London in
Oxford.
lockdown. You were in Oxford, okay.
Yes, I was living in Oxford, and yeah, I was locked down, so we weren't going to uni. Uni was online at that point. Um, and basically everything was just online, and social interactions were very limited. Um, so that did not help at all. Also, being away from family did not help. Um, I felt very isolated. Um, so yeah, that's what I have to say about COVID, because it just happened at the wrong time, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like you were. I mean, when I was going through it, I mean, obviously the lockdown wasn't happening, but I spent most of my time indoors anyway, just researching it, like frantically researching the condition, talking about it all the time. Um, I can imagine that being in lockdown must have made that even more intense. Not being able to go outside. I mean, I don't know if you had been able to go outside and socialize at that point, Lulu, would you have done it, or was there?
Probably not. Probably not the first 2 weeks anyway. I wasn't able to get out of my room, so let alone go somewhere. But I would say, like, maybe a bit later on, once I started my recovery, it would have been very helpful to travel, to go to places, to meet with other people. But it was limited, and that wasn't helpful. But anyway, for the first 2 weeks, probably not. No.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. I think one thing, Sean, I want to mention is that when I was going this experience, one of the things that I really wished someone would tell me, other than you, because I was like, okay, I really want someone else to tell me this. Because you were talking to me, I felt like you were talking to me. You were telling me all of these things, reassuring me. But I also wanted to hear it from someone else. Every time I would talk about my symptoms, I could see concern and fear in people's eyes. And I just didn't want that. I wanted to talk to someone about it, and they'd be like, "Oh, yeah, that's fine. Like, oh, it's nothing." Or I really wanted to hear that someone tell me, "Oh, you're okay. Like, don't worry. This happens a lot. It's just this and it's just that. It's just a defense mechanism."
Yeah.
And that never happened.
And you mean that in terms, Lulu, of speaking to friends, or speaking to other doctors or therapists, or what
I tried
context?
even both, to be honest. Family and friends. I think I introduced this idea of depersonal, like the name of the disorder or the title depersonalization. None of my friends heard of it before me, and none of my family members. So they didn't know. They were all concerned and scared, and they had fear. But even when I went to therapists, I did go to therapists, and I would go and I would explain what I'm feeling. I remember the therapist would be like, "Yeah, that's just anxiety." And now I know she's right, but it just that wasn't, to me, that wasn't anxiety, because I've always been an anxious person, not to a point where it interfered with my life. But I thought I knew what is anxiety. And that just did not feel like anxiety. So it just sounded very dismissive.
This is also one of the reasons that DPDR isn't quite as well known as it should be. Is because it tends to get diagnosed as anxiety or generalized anxiety, which is technically not incorrect because it is an anxiety-based condition, but it's not specific enough that it gives you a path to move forward from. So and I had the same experience earlier, like I remember my doctor saying to me, this sounds like anxiety, and you look anxious, and loss of appetite, sleep disruption. These are symptoms of anxiety, and I was going like, this isn't anxiety. Me too. I was an anxious person. I mean, again, I hadn't had panic attacks, but I know I would have a tendency towards being quite introspective, and I was thinking to myself this isn't anxiety. Anxiety doesn't make me feel. Anxiety doesn't make me not recognize myself when I look in the mirror. Anxiety doesn't affect my vision. Anxiety doesn't make me feel like I don't, my fam. It doesn't make my mind go blank. That's not anxiety. But the thing is that it is anxiety. It's just a different level of anxiety than the frame of reference that we had prior to this happening. So that and this is one of the most frustrating aspects of getting an explanation or a diagnosis, is that often the diagnosis that you're getting is correct. It's actually correct, but it's just a fraction of the information that you need. It's just the tip of the iceberg. It's like, okay, it's anxiety. Great. Now, tell me about the rest of these symptoms. Okay, here's why those are there. But if you leave the doctor's office without those explanations, you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, he thinks I've got anxiety, but my vision is damaged. I don't recognize myself. This is something else. And that worry still stays there, saying this is a different thing. Whatever your doctor's been saying, okay, she's got an idea about it, but I don't think that's what I have, and that just keeps the cycle of anxiety going. It can be quite
100%.
frustrating. Yeah.
Yeah. But the depersonalization is actually in the DSM as a separate disorder. So that doesn't stop professionals from even labeling. Then sometimes the label helps. I know in modern psychology, they don't use labels as much anymore. But sometimes in situations like this, putting a label can help. I needed the label at that time, because if they did not put a label on me, the other label would be I'm going crazy. So it's either one of them. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I mean, I remember when I saw that there's the depersonalization disorder, my first reaction was, well, now I have a disorder. And the word disorder feels to me like it's something that's damaged inside of me, and that it is now a permanent thing. But in actuality, the word disorder is just it's a categorical word, So the example that I like to give is, if you take somebody who has, if somebody has 3 panic attacks in the course of a month, they're having panic attacks, right? But if that person has 30 panic attacks in the course of a month, it's panic disorder, right? But at no point is it anything other than panic attacks. It's still just panic attacks. It's the degree to which you're experiencing them. It becomes
the frequency and
yes, exactly. It's the frequency of it requires it to be categorized as a different word. But it's important that the disorder, it sounds like it implies a permanent damage or a permanent break. It doesn't. It is literally just a categorization, and all it's referring to is the fact that the experience of depersonalization is lasting for longer, is there for longer than it should. That's all. That's all it refers to. So it can be a scary thing to come across at first, but once you understand it, it's just another form of categorization.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the stigma around mental health, and I had to make peace with the idea that I might be struggling with a disorder, and that's okay. It's like having I used to think of it. It's like, okay, I have a flu, or maybe let's say I'm diabetic. What difference would it make? Like I have a disorder, mental health disorder, or I am diabetic. Both of them, I perceive them as right equal.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And the thing is that like, you know, when we're talking about this now, it's just like, okay, this makes sense. This is why this word is there, this category is here. When you're going through DPDR and you're going through anxiety, you see things like this, or you see a reference to it, or in the same way that you see like posts on Reddit or whatever, and you'll see a certain statement or a set of words or a phrasing, and it just sets you off. It just sets you off because you're already on high alert for evidence of something that means that you're in trouble, or something that means that you've got it.
I'm very sorry.
That's okay.
She's her daughter dog,
What's your dog's name?
Bella.
Bella. Nice name.
Yeah,
Nice
the
name.
little puppy. Yes. Sorry, by the way, I'm really sorry.
No, 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 no. That's perfectly fine. But it just demonstrates to you again, as we were saying earlier, this heightened awareness of all these different statements and words and categories. They're just words. And as your recovery continues and your anxiety winds down, all of that high alert and the feelings of the catastrophizing, the racing thoughts all start to fade away. And then you look at these things again from a non-anxious point of view, and you just say, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. These are. It makes sense that person had that experience. It makes sense that I had that experience." But the level of anxiety with which you're perceiving these things has greatly diminished. So you're not jumping to terrifying conclusions. You're not deciding that like, oh, well, my version is different. I have some incurable disorder or whatever. You're just saying, okay, I understand this now. I understand it was scary when I was going through it, but now I have it, or now I understand it, and I can let it go, and I am letting it go.
100%. 100% agree with you. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So as your recovery continued, what did it feel, especially towards the end of your recovery? What did it feel like to come back into not feeling anxiety? Was it because people often describe it as they might say it just kind of happened. I didn't really notice it was happening, or was
Yeah.
it? Yeah, how was that for you?
Yeah, so I would say if you feel like if the person who's watching and struggling feels like today I woke up and I'm fine, woohoo, good, I'm back to living life, probably not. Probably that's not yet the point where they feel like where they've recovered. And I'm very sorry to say that, but that just if they know this, they just avoid a lot of disappointment because true recovery, when I felt like I recovered, it was when I stopped even remembering the symptoms or I stopped remembering to check in, and it just felt like natural. I don't know, like I didn't know when it happened. It just happened exactly how you would describe it. I just slowly stopped checking in. The symptoms just stopped coming up, and one thing, I stopped celebrating the wins of like, okay, today I didn't feel any symptoms. I stopped celebrating that. So yeah, it just happened. It doesn't happen in one day. You don't just wake up and it's gone. It happens slowly, and slowly you don't even realize it's happening.
Absolutely. It's like, what 1 in 3 people will develop an anxiety-based condition at some point in their lives. And DPDR is an example of an anxiety-based condition. So when you walk down the street in London or Oxford or wherever, you're going to be walking past people who have developed and recovered from anxiety-based conditions. Those people are not walking around saying to themselves, "I'm so happy I don't have agoraphobia anymore. I'm so happy I don't have panic disorder anymore, or DPD or whatever." And the reason they're not doing that is because the condition has nothing to do with them anymore. It has nothing to do with them anymore. It's a thing that happened. They understand it now, and it's gone. It's nothing to do with them. And that's what recovery is. So, your the actual process of recovery reflects that. It reflects that it has nothing to do with you anymore. So if you so when you wake up in the morning and anxiety isn't there, it's not like you start throwing a party. You just go about your day because it's like, but well, why would I be celebrating something that has nothing to do with me anymore? In the same way that if you felt a little bit of anxiety when you woke up, you wouldn't like sit there thinking, oh my God, it's coming back. When you just get out of bed and start your day because it has nothing to do with you anymore, you know? And that's what it is. In the same way that having a song stuck in your head, like how do you get rid of a song stuck in your head? You demonstrate to your brain that it has nothing to do with you anymore by listening to other music, not by pointing at it and saying, I don't want this around, I'm frustrated, I'm sick of it, or celebrating when the song is gone. It has nothing to do with you anymore. And that's
Yeah.
that's what happens that's how our behavior reflects that. It can take time to get to that place of realizing that that's what you do, because it feels strange to not throw the kitchen sink at this to try and fix it in the moment. But when you understand that you're training yourself to not think about it, you're more compassionate with yourself, and you give yourself the time and the space that you need for it to recover. But absolutely, I mean, you start to have days where at the end of the day you say to yourself, I forgot to feel anxious today. I was just too busy studying. I was too busy hanging out with my friends. Like I forgot to feel DPDR. And now I'm thinking about it, so I'm going to distract myself and play a game or something, or go, read a book or go to bed. But that's it. It just becomes less and less important, and you become less and less concerned about it, and then you just forget to check in on it, and then it's gone.
Yes, 100%. That explains it very well and accurately how it happened. Yeah.
I mean, it's so fascinating to me, Lulu, that you wrote your dissertation about depersonalization. So I know people watching the channel are going to be super interested in this. So so you at what point did you make the decision to write your dissertation on depersonalization, and what was that process like?
On my third year of university in my undergrad, I wanted to do it about depersonalization. So I really wanted it so bad because at that point I felt like I've recovered. I think I was like almost there. Like I felt like I was just by the end of this journey, I felt like I'm recovering finally. And I knew that this is something that has changed my life. And I remember when I was struggling, I thought to myself, I wish I can get rid of this pain and this feeling. And the other wish, I want to help as many people as I can to get rid of this nasty feeling. So during my undergraduate, I couldn't do it because there wasn't any ongoing study at the university about depersonalization. And because I was still an undergraduate, my study, sorry, my little puppy is just here saying hello.
That's okay.
But then, so yeah, in my undergrad, I couldn't do it because there wasn't any ongoing study at the university about depersonalization. So I just did a study about anxiety, still in my interest, in my area of interest. But it was during my master's. So I finished my undergrad and immediately jumped to my master's, no break. And during my master's, all right, that's it. That's the point. I'm going to do what I want to do, the passion I have, and the area I'm interested in, the area I've struggled in the most. And I want to do my study about it. I want to learn more about this disorder. I want to research it. I want to write about it. So I spoke to my supervisor at that point. I was assigned a supervisor, and I spoke to my supervisor, and he agreed to do a study about it. And yeah, it happened.
That's so wonderful. So and what is was there a kind of a specific thesis behind the study, or what are you trying to what's the
Yeah,
goal of the research?
100%. So basically, we were trying to see how we can induce. So I wasn't allowed to work with a clinical population because people who are allowed to do research on clinical population are those who are already clinicians, and I'm not a clinician yet. So I wasn't allowed to do a study on a clinical population, which means that people who are already struggling. So, but what we tried to do in the study is we tried to, of course, ethically induce depersonalization symptoms. And the way we did that is because there were some studies. Well, after we did the literature review, we found that there are some studies which show a relationship between the vestibular system and symptoms of DPDR. And the vestibular system is the system in your inner ear which is responsible for your balance. And apparently, people who struggle with a vestibular disorder or have problems in their balance system experience DPDR symptoms. And I think, which was very interesting, I was watching one of your episodes with someone who's also sharing their recovery journey, and they've mentioned that they were on a boat trip. I don't remember their name. I'm so sorry, but you can maybe mention that later. They mentioned that they were on a boat trip and they had this weird feeling or sickness because of equilibrium and motion sickness. And when I was watching, I immediately thought of my study because we did find significant results that yes, people who struggle with a vestibular disorder or have problems in their balance are more likely to experience DPDR symptoms.
Interesting. So, and how did you induce it?
So we used something called galvanic vestibular stimulation. And so it's kind of like some electrodes, you put them behind the ear, and it produces electric currents. But of course it was approved by the ethics committee, so it wasn't going to cause any harm to participants, and it wasn't going to cause any long-lasting effects. But basically, we place the electrodes just behind the ears, and we stimulate the vestibular system. And what we do is once we stimulate, it's a disruptive stimulation. So that means that the vestibular system is disrupted. So we disrupt the vestibular system. And after that, what we do is during the stimulation, we gave them a questionnaire. The questionnaire is asking them about DPDR symptoms. So we gave them we gave people, so we did fake stimulation, we did real stimulation. So some people had real stimulation behind their ears and some people had it fake. So we put the electrodes on their neck. So, but they didn't know it was fake. And at that point, we started asking them about symptoms of DPDR. And we realized that people who had the real stimulation actually reported higher level of DPDR symptoms, which showed that this disruption in the vestibular system is linked to DPDR. That's a very interesting area of research, especially vestibular system is a very interesting area of research happening right now, and it's linked to a lot of clinical disorders as well.
It's very interesting. And so what you're researching, it's that it wasn't directly linked with, it wasn't a study of like anxiety-based DPDR. It was more about kind of inducing the actual the physical or the experience of it.
100%. So it was more about the physiological cause of it. So we're trying to see what could contribute to developing DPDR. Of course, there are a lot of factors that, and I think PTSD and trauma is one of them. But it turns out also people who have vestibular problems also struggle with that, or are more likely to struggle with DPDR. So that's something which is very interesting, because I have a history of vestibular disease in my family. And just recently I was diagnosed with vertigo. So I have an inner ear problem where I struggle with balance. So that was also an interesting insight, because I realized, okay, maybe that made me more likely to develop DPDR. But again, research like this is always something that you basically evaluate. So you can't say it's not proof, right? You don't prove that. You never prove that, but it's a hypothesis that you either support
Yeah.
or you don't support. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's, and the fact that like just the temporary feeling of depersonalization and derealization is so common. It is so common. I mean, people experience this all the time. People experience this through like meditation. They experience it through drug use. They'll experience it through if someone's jet lagged after a long flight, they'll be a bit woozy and groggy and then experience DPDR. It's estimated that up to 75% of people will experience it briefly, at least briefly, at some point in their lives. And then with anxiety-based DPDR, it is precipitated, or it is furthered by the consistent focus on it, based on DPDR as in the context of it being a protective mechanism. It's sometimes referred to as the airbag of the brain. In people who are in burning buildings or like war zones, or victims of violence, will often describe this thing of disconnection. But it's so great that any type of investigation into the actual physiology and experience of it is happening, because the more that this is demystified and just explained as like, this is a common thing, like not only is this like super common, but like here's a simple way to induce it temporarily. It just kind of takes it out of the realm of being this terrifying, vague,
Rare. Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Yes.
abnormal thing, and to no, this is not rare. It's not abnormal. This is super common. It's nothing to be. It's nothing to be. It happens in different contexts. It is nothing to be afraid of, and that demystification of it is such a good thing to hear about.
Yeah, and in fact, people, it was a popular study at the university, because what we do is we do a study on undergraduate students and they earn credits. So I remember I was fully booked because everyone wanted to do this study. In fact, people were really interested, like, okay, let them try to induce this weird state in me. And they would come to the lab and I would just induce it. Yeah, it's not as scary as people, when they are struggling, feel like it is.
Yeah, certainly. And again, in particular, when it's on an ongoing basis in the context of an anxiety-based condition, it is in a feedback loop between the anxiety and DPDR as a symptom of anxiety that causes it to persist. And so is this something that you want to kind of pursue long-term, Lulu? The experience of depersonalization, or how do you see your career in clinical psychology in the future?
So I will definitely carry on doing research about it in the future. But for now, I'm focusing on clinical work. So I'm trying to get my hands on some experience because I need to apply for my doctorate. In the UK, you need a doctorate to become a licensed clinical psychologist. So all I need to do right now is focus on getting my hands on some experience. But for the future, my goal is to help as many people I would like to specialize in depersonalization and help as many people who are struggling with this disorder. Also because, to be honest, I don't see many clinicians who are specialized in it. I know that a lot of clinicians are specialized in anxiety disorders, but I feel like it's needed that someone who is specialized in this depersonalization state and can approach the situation in a non-dismissive way as, oh, it's just anxiety. You know what I mean? So that's my goal. And again, hopefully when I become licensed clinician, do more research with clinical population. I think definitely is something that I'm interested in. I wasn't able to do it as a student, but hopefully as a clinician, I would be able to run a study with the clinical population. And by the way, coming back to your point about anxiety and the vestibular, there is actually a link, because I didn't do that in my study, but because I was doing the literature review, there was a study that showed people who have vestibular disorders are more anxious than others. And so they said in their study that it's possible that the high level of anxiety is what's triggering the feeling of unreality in those people who have dysfunction in their vestibular system.
Interesting.
So it is linked always. Anxiety is linked to DPDR always.
Yeah, certainly. And yeah, it's interesting the thing we say about clinicians who specialize in it, because there are a lot of anxiety specialists out there, and they tend to be, from what I've heard from people I've spoken to over the years, they tend to be more helpful than just general practitioners, just because of the specificity they can offer. However, they can often not be tailored enough for the symptoms of DP and DR. So they, for example, they may just be able to say, well, the feeling disconnection that you have, that's part of anxiety. But then there's all these other symptoms that, a feeling of, for example, the visual symptoms that often come with the blank mind, that may be, they may want very kind of specific guidance with that may not be present with even a clinician who specializes in anxiety, because it's so specific. And so it is really, really good to hear that, like, someone like yourself is moving into that field. And it's just about normalizing it, Lulu, as well. It's just about normalizing that type of care and that type of information. And I do think that my hope would be that in maybe 5 years' time or 10 years' time, that the awareness of DPDR would become so normalized that for most people, when they walk into a doctor's office or a therapist's office and they describe what they're going through, that the therapist will say to them, yeah, that's called depersonalization. And what's scary, but it's, yeah, all that stuff with the mirror, all that stuff with the feelings of unfamiliarity, visual symptoms, yeah, these are all symptoms of that. Here's some guidance. Here's a plan of action. Here's what we're going to do. And just send them away from the office that day with a plan of action, a plan of attack, and knowing that they're not alone and that there is a path towards recovery. So to have you be part of that, based in London or wherever you're going to be based, is a very, very positive thing.
Yes, I hope so. And I think the fact that I have went through it myself is even a bonus, because it's one of those disorders where you don't fully understand it, or let's say you understand it fully if you go through it yourself.
Yeah.
So I think depersonalization was the best thing that happened in my life, because it changed my life to the better. Of course, it was very difficult, but it just made me so aware of myself, my goals, my future, what I want. It made me a better person. It taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about myself, about what I want. It just made me way more mature, and it also brought out a side of me, a survivor, which I didn't know even that was there. I felt like I wanted to do anything to just survive and to just be better.
Yeah, absolutely. Lulu, how was the DP manual helpful in your recovery?
Oh, I think that needs an episode by itself. It was a key to my recovery. It was the key. So I don't think I would have found my recovery path if it wasn't for the DP manual. The relaxation program, or the relaxation audio, which was included in the manual, I used to listen to it every night. It was so helpful, because I felt like it was getting in my subconscious when I'm trying to fall asleep, and I would meditate and breathe while listening to it. And it was one of those that would really help calm my nervous system every time I listened to it, because it's calming, but it's also full of reassurance about things that you really want to hear. I remember as well, I think there was a pep talk, I think. It was also very good. I think I used to listen to it every time I'm cleaning and every time I'm washing the dishes or whatever. I would listen to it all the time. But in general, the DP manual, it just it gives you it gave me all this strategy, or it gave me all the information I needed, all the answers I was looking for. For example, for my fear of mirrors, I took what was said in the book about don't use the mirror to stare. I stopped staring at myself in the mirror. I used the mirror I remember I used the mirror to fix my hair, check my teeth, fix my makeup, and leave. Like, I don't need to look. I use it for its purpose. And that helped. Because I feel like normal people don't go on looking in the mirror and just stare for no reason. People usually go to look in the mirror and, I don't know, check how they look, for example, not just check if they're real. Also, like, playing music. I think you've mentioned that in the book as well, like playing music in the background and just sing with the music, do something else. That helped a lot. More than anything, it was the education that came with the book, the education about the disorder itself, or depersonalization. It was an educational information for me to know that what I'm going through is not rare, is not something crazy, is not it's not this vague or bizarre disorder or illness or so yeah, it was a big help. I'm so grateful. I think it's 100% worth it. And one thing I want to say, Sean, is that at that point I was looking around. I think maybe there were a couple other than you that were speaking about DPDR. And I'm gonna be completely honest here. These people, I remember I was checking as much as I was checking your content, I was checking their content, and I wanted to sign up because they've also got like mentorship or something. Imagine that I had to pay $3,000. It was $3,000 just to get help from them. So it was ridiculous. To me, it was a scam. Whereas when I made the decision to buy the DP manual, I knew it wasn't for business purpose. It wasn't a scam. It was real. Somebody who is truly wanting to help. It was very remarkable and it was truly helpful.
Thank you for the kind words, Sue. I really appreciate that, and I'm so happy that it was helpful. Yeah, the reason I wrote the book in the first place was when I recovered in 2007. At the time there was so little information out there, and the thing is that like all the information that I needed, it was out there, except it was in all these different books and all these different sources and different papers and stuff. So it was all the information about the condition was there because it's an anxiety-based condition. But in order to find it, I had to go through countless different sources and then kind of accumulate it myself, and then just put together something that worked for me through trial and error. So, but I mean, I remember thinking, like, I would have given the world, like, to have had a conversation with somebody who just explains to me what was going on, what these symptoms were, why they were happening, what to do about it, what to expect, what not to expect, what pitfalls to avoid on the path to recovery. It makes me very, very happy that the book is continuing to do that, and also like that it helped you to recover, but now you're going to go on to have a lifetime and a career of helping other people to recover. I mean, that's like wildest dreams come true. Like, I'm so happy to hear that, Lulu. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, that's just feels like gives me a sense of purpose in life, basically.
Yeah, yeah. So a question that people always ask me, and I always ask on the interviews, is, now that you've recovered, is getting back to normal really getting back to normal?
Yeah, getting back to normal is really getting back to normal, and you just feel like You don't, to be honest, sometimes I don't even remember how I was feeling at that point. Like I'm back to normal. And even though at that point in my life, I couldn't remember what normal felt like, but now I can't remember what that phase felt like. I'm back to living life, but guess what? I'm back to normal, but with a lot more knowledge, and back to normal with a lot more resilient, and way more resilient. And I feel stronger, and I feel more knowledgeable. I feel a sense of purpose in my life more than ever. So yes, you get back to normal. It really is getting back to normal. It's getting back to normal, but even better.
That's fantastic. That's so good to hear. Um, so, Lulu, will you tell us a bit about your own work and the social media content you're putting out now? Because is this something you started relatively recently?
Yes, very recently. It's only been a couple of months, I think. And initially, I wanted to create this page only for DPDR and only for people who are struggling with DPDR. Um, but I thought I don't want to make it so limited, because as important as DPDR, there are also a lot of other mental health conditions that deserve as much attention as DPDR. And because I've got the knowledge, I thought I don't want to limit people from seeing other information or getting the right knowledge for themselves, basically, from this account. So I started it recently. I want to grow it more, and hopefully once it gets to a point where it's big enough, I'm gonna start doing podcasts with people, maybe people who are struggling, maybe people who have struggled and recovered. It's just an idea that I have, and I'm hoping it's going to get to that point. But for now, it's mainly psychoeducation. I will be posting a lot of educational content. A lot of it is going to be also from my personal experience. If this page continues to grow until I'm licensed, then it can also be a page where people can get consultation with me. But I can't do that now until I'm licensed.
That's fantastic. What a cool thing to do, and what a cool project to have while you're pursuing your own work and building up your own career. So so what's the title of the page again, Lou?
Healing.recipes. It's on Instagram.
On Instagram, okay. So it's on Instagram at the moment, and you're hoping to branch out into podcasts. So maybe at some point in the future, you'll be on Spotify or have your own YouTube channel, or yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but for the moment, for anyone watching, go to the YouTube description, and we'll have a link to Lulu's Instagram page. So go straight over and follow her there. And
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you.
Of course, Lulu. And so I've got one more question. So there's going to be people watching this interview who may be going through something very similar to what you went through. People who are struggling with DPDR, who may be now where you were a couple of years ago. What advice would you have? What advice would you have for yourself if you could speak to yourself back then? What advice would you have for those people watching now?
So if it's okay, it's more of something I have to say to them more than advice. I would say to them that they're okay. First of all, that's something that I really wanted someone to tell me, and I want to say, you are okay. You will recover from this. You're not going crazy, and everything is going to be okay. You're going to get back to your normal life, and it's going to be all good. Um, if I want to give an advice, the one single advice I have to give is, don't celebrate your wins. Recovery is up and down. So when you feel like you've recovered, even if you feel good and normal for a month, don't celebrate it. Just wait, and just let it be a natural process of recovery. It doesn't have to be, oh, I'm celebrating. I think we've already covered that, but that would be my advice for them to avoid disappointment. That was my biggest disappointment. That would put me back to square one because I'm celebrating my win and then I'm back to square one. So I would say never do that. Oh, and don't go on Google. Don't Google your symptoms. It's not going to help you. It's not. Everything you want to know is in the DP manual, and I'm not biased. I mean it. I mean it 100%.
Thank you, Lulu. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. It was something you mentioned earlier. It's the ups and downs. It's like if you're, when we expect it to be a light switch that gets switched off, and we wake up one day and we feel that the anxiety is gone, then we're yes, it's gone. Thank God. But then we forget that it's ups and downs. It's waves. Now the waves are getting smaller over time, so the frequency of the waves is getting smaller, or the size of the waves is getting smaller, I guess. But those waves are still, you're going to have ups and downs, and that's okay. That's part of the recovery process. If you are anticipating this to switch off overnight, those waves are going to feel very demoralizing. If you expect those waves to happen and you understand I'm going to have days where I feel better, I'm going to have days where the anxiety feels more intense, where it feels less intense, and that's okay. And it's going to go up and down, but it's going to fade away over time. If you can anticipate that and expect it, it makes the recovery journey so much easier, because you're not going between like absolute joy and absolute disappointment. You're just staying in the middle road and just saying, okay, I've had a bit of an anxious day yesterday. Today I'm feeling better, and today the next day I may feel better again, and then the next day I might feel a bit anxious. But whatever happens, I get out of bed, I start my day, and I don't sit around celebrating this, or I don't dance around celebrating it, and I don't sit around feeling sorry for myself. I move with those waves. I surf them, and I let them, and I carry myself towards the shore on it,
100%.
Yeah. Lulu, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. I really, really enjoyed this. Thank you for sharing your experience. And I think a very prominent theme in this conversation has been the idea of being able to speak to somebody, and sharing the experience of it, and the frustration of not being able to do that. As I said, the reason I wrote the book in the first place was to share my experience with people who were going through it, and it makes me so happy that it is still helping people almost 20 years, or actually 20 years later now at this stage. But it makes me even happier to see that someone like yourself is now moving into their career, taking not just that information, but your own experience with it forward. Because when, in 20 years' time, when some kid who's like 18 years old comes into your office and says to you, I think I'm going crazy, I think I've lost my mind, I don't feel real, I don't know what to do, can you please help me? You'll be able to sit them down and you'll be able to help them. Not just from a point of view of having done the studies, which of course you have, or from a personal experience, and you can say to them, I went through that too, I know exactly what you're talking about, I know it's scary, but this is normal and natural, you're not going to die, you're not going to go crazy, you'll be fine, I promise you. And that unique experience, that unique perspective that you've gotten from your personal experience is going to benefit people throughout your career and your life. So that's a wonderful thing.
Thank you so much. I really hope so, and I feel honored, honestly, that you told me about this opportunity to come on this interview with you. So thank you so much for that. I look up to your work and I admire that. So thanks for your work as well.
Thank you so much, Lulu. That means the world to me. Thank you so much for being on the channel, Lulu. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and keep up the good work and stay in touch, okay?
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.